You probably didn't vote for a trade war. You didn't ask for your groceries to get more expensive or your next iPhone to cost $50 more. And yet, here we are. Tariffs, quiet, technical, boring even, but they're hitting you right where it hurts most, your wallet. They were supposed to punish China, pressure Europe, protect American workers. Instead, they're punishing the checkout line at Costco, the seafood aisle in Brooklyn, the parts you need to fix your car in Missouri. This isn't about Wall Street. It's about your weekly budget. And the question no one is asking out loud: if tariffs are hurting everyday Americans, who exactly are they protecting? Today, we're breaking down the invisible tax that's been driving up prices across the board. Not with politics, not with theory, just facts, and a reality most Americans are quietly living through. It doesn't hit all at once. There's no headline screaming tariffs raise food prices overnight. But it creeps in, cart by cart, bill by bill, item by item. You walk into a grocery store in suburban Texas and notice the frozen shrimp you've always bought for $6.99 is now $9.29. The French cheese in the deli aisle has been replaced by a cheaper domestic brand. The olive oil bottle from Spain now has a generic label and a price tag 30% higher. It's not inflation. It's not supply chain disruptions. It's tariffs. Over the past 6 years, the United States has imposed hundreds of billions of dollars in import taxes on goods from China, the European Union, and other key trading partners. Initially billed as strategic weapons in a global trade battle, these tariffs have now become a permanent cost baked into the American consumer experience. In 2018, the US began levying tariffs of up to 25% on over $300 billion worth of Chinese imports. Those duties remain in place today, affecting products ranging from laptops to auto parts to kitchen appliances. And while the political rhetoric painted these measures as penalties on foreign producers, economic data tells a very different story. According to a 2024 report from the Nonpartisan Tax Foundation, over 90% of tariff costs are passed directly to US consumers and businesses. They're not absorbed in Beijing, they're added to your Amazon cart. And it's not just China. As a result of a separate trade dispute with Europe over airplane subsidies, the US slapped duties on French wine, German tools, Italian cheeses, and more. A block of Parmigiano Reggiano that used to cost $15, now it's closer to $20, if you can even find it. Even seafood hasn't escaped the price spike. Frozen shrimp from India and Vietnam now face anti-dumping tariffs of 20 to 35%, depending on the product. That means a family pack that used to cost under $10 is now pushing $15, according to a recent analysis by the American Seafood Importers Association. And electronics? A new report from the Consumer Technology Association found that tariffs added $1.2 billion in extra costs to laptop and tablet imports in 2023 alone. The average price for a basic printer has risen by $35. Even something as ordinary as a Wi-Fi router now costs more, not because it's better, but because it's taxed at the border. In many cases, these aren't luxury goods, they're household essentials. At first glance, none of this seems catastrophic, but it adds up fast. A $2 increase in canned tuna, a $10 bump on a new toaster, a few extra dollars on shampoo imported from Korea. Multiply that across 330 million Americans, and we're talking about tens of billions of dollars quietly transferred from working-class families to cover policy decisions made in Washington. Worse, these tariffs don't show up on your receipt. You don't see a line that says import tax, but they're there, hidden in higher shelf prices, bundled into delivery fees, or embedded in the cost of doing business for small retailers. And while these taxes were once presented as temporary leverage in a global economic tug-of-war, there is no expiration date in sight. The Biden administration, despite promising trade normalization, has largely maintained Trump-era tariffs, and both parties appear hesitant to lift them, fearing political backlash. The result is a silent squeeze on American households, not through loud legislative changes, but through slow, unrelenting price pressure on everyday items. Tariffs may not dominate the evening news anymore, but they're dominating your grocery bill, your hardware purchase, and your back-to-school shopping. And they're doing it quietly. Tariffs weren't supposed to work this way. They were sold as a tool of economic strength, an assertive move to protect American manufacturing, punish unfair foreign practices, and bring jobs back home. They were marketed as a patriotic tax, one that would make foreign companies pay for flooding our markets with cheap goods. But that's not how global economics works in 2025. The first wave of tariffs, launched under the Trump administration in 2018, was part of a high-stakes trade war with China. The argument was simple. China was manipulating its currency, subsidizing its industries, and undercutting American jobs. Tariffs, then, would level the playing field. But almost immediately, economists warned, tariffs are a tax on imports, and importers pass that cost along to customers. Fast forward 6 years, and those warnings have become reality. A study from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, updated in early 2025, found that American firms paid nearly $100 billion in tariff-related costs between 2018 and 2024. Roughly 90 cents of every dollar was passed directly to consumers in the form of higher prices. And here's the real problem. Global supply chains are far more integrated than politicians admit. When the US slaps a 25% tariff on Chinese semiconductors, it's not just hurting Chinese exporters. It's driving up the cost of everything that relies on those chips: smartphones, dishwashers, cars, medical devices. American factories don't have the capacity to replace those components overnight. So companies either pay the tariff or stop selling, and most pay the tariff. Even large multinationals like Apple, Dell, and Whirlpool, who have tried to shift some production to Vietnam, India, or Mexico, still depend heavily on Chinese parts. No matter where the final product is assembled, many of the components cross the Pacific multiple times. That means tariffs are being applied repeatedly, what economists call cascading costs. And it's not just about China. The tariffs against Europe, triggered by a long-standing trade dispute over aircraft subsidies, were more symbolic than strategic. Washington and Brussels have been sparring for decades over Boeing versus Airbus, but in 2020, the conflict spilled into consumer goods: wine, cheese, coffee machines, tools. Suddenly, a fight about planes became a tax on your dinner table. But once imposed, these tariffs proved politically sticky. Neither party wants to look soft on foreign competitors, and lifting tariffs, especially those tied to China, invites criticism from both sides of the aisle, so they stay. Meanwhile, the original justification, reviving American industry, has failed to materialize in any meaningful way. The US Department of Commerce recently reported that, despite heavy tariffs on steel and aluminum, domestic production has barely increased. Manufacturing jobs in sectors targeted by tariffs have remained flat or declined, while consumers in all income brackets face higher costs. This isn't just a policy failure. It's a misalignment of narrative and reality. Washington talks about decoupling from China, but American retailers, from Home Depot to Best Buy, still rely on Chinese goods to stock their shelves. American farmers still need fertilizer from Morocco. American automakers still import precision parts from Germany and Japan. And American consumers still expect choice, affordability, and convenience. Tariffs were meant to bend the global economy back in America's favor. Instead, they've become a kind of stealth tax, a quiet drain on purchasing power in a country already struggling with high interest rates, student debt, and medical costs. And perhaps the most revealing fact of all? Most Americans don't even realize they're paying. There's no line item, no explanation. Just a little more here, a little more there, until the budget breaks and no one remembers why groceries got so expensive in the first place. Tariffs don't make headlines anymore, but they're making life harder for millions of Americans, especially those who can least afford it. Let's start with the obvious: low and middle income families. These households spend a larger portion of their income on essentials: food, clothing, household goods. When prices rise even slightly, the impact is immediate and personal. A 20% increase in imported canned tuna or frozen shrimp isn't a rounding error. It's a missed lunch or a tighter grocery run. A 2025 survey by the Urban Institute found that over 63% of lower-income Americans have noticed a significant price increase in common household items in the past year, and most had no idea tariffs were part of the reason. One respondent put it plainly: "We're not buying luxury, We're buying what we need, and even that is becoming unaffordable. Then come the small business owners. Whether it's a hardware store in Ohio or a neighborhood cafe in Portland, many of these businesses rely on imported supplies: paper goods, cleaning products, utensils, tech accessories, even furniture. Unlike major retailers, they don't have the leverage to negotiate lower prices or shift to alternate suppliers. When costs go up, they have only two choices: raise prices or eat the losses. And when they raise prices, customers walk away. That's the silent squeeze that's pushing mom-and-pop operations toward the edge. Retailers are also caught in the crossfire. Major chains like Target and Walmart have already acknowledged in earnings calls that tariffs have forced price hikes on hundreds of SKUs, from backpacks to electronics. While they try to mask the pain with bulk deals and private labels, even the biggest names can't completely absorb the cost. And students, often left out of these discussions, are feeling it too. College essentials like laptops, routers, tablets, and dorm room appliances are now significantly more expensive than they were pre-2018. For a family scraping together tuition and living expenses, that extra $50 here or $100 there can mean delaying or downsizing purchases. Meanwhile, retirees on fixed incomes are squeezed the hardest. Their pensions or social security checks don't adjust fast enough to keep up with tariff-induced inflation. A few dollars more at the pharmacy, a slightly higher grocery bill, a replacement microwave that costs $30 more than it used to. Over time, it chips away at dignity, independence, and stability. Geographically, urban centers and coastal cities are seeing sharper impacts. Places like Los Angeles, New York, Seattle, and San Francisco, where cost of living is already high and many imported goods dominate local markets. But rural areas aren't immune. Farmers in the Midwest and South, for instance, have seen both sides of the tariff coin. Many of them were promised protection from cheap foreign competition. But in reality, they've also been hit by retaliatory tariffs from other countries, making it harder to export soybeans, pork, or corn abroad. Add to that higher prices for imported machinery and fertilizer, and you get an agricultural economy under quiet but constant stress. And then there's the supply chain workers. Truckers, warehouse clerks, dock workers, who face the downstream effects. As businesses shift supply lines, scale back inventories, or cancel shipments due to cost, hours get cut, schedules shrink, some lose jobs altogether. What makes this crisis particularly dangerous is how invisible it is. Tariffs don't announce themselves. There's no crash, no pink slips, no foreclosure notices, just a slow erosion of buying power like sand slipping through your fingers. It's death by 1,000 cuts. And when the pain is this diffuse, spread across regions, industries, income levels, it becomes nearly impossible to organize around. There's no protest, no hashtag, no national debate, just quiet, collective struggle. Because when every group is affected a little, no one screams loud enough for Washington to hear. You won't see them on cable news. They're not writing op-eds or launching lobbying campaigns, but they're the ones paying the real cost of America's trade war. Every single day. Linda Marcus, a part-time librarian in Akron, Ohio, lives on a tight budget. She doesn't buy much, but when her old laptop died, she scoured the internet for a replacement. I just needed something basic for email and Zoom. Used to be, I could get one under $400. Now, after taxes, fees, and shipping, it was nearly $550. It's the same model. Nothing changed, just more expensive. She didn't know it, but that extra cost? Tariffs on Chinese electronics. Down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Jamal Rise runs a small auto detailing business. Most of his cleaning supplies are imported. Gloves, polish, sprayers, microfiber towels. This year, my supply costs are up almost 25%. I'm charging more, but customers complain. Some don't come back. I feel like I'm stuck. If I keep prices low, I lose money. If I raise them, I lose customers. In Fresno, California, Anna and Miguel Gonzalez used to enjoy seafood night every Friday, a small ritual for their kids. But lately, even frozen shrimp is a luxury. We used to get a family pack for $9. Last time, it was $14. So now we do eggs or canned tuna instead. They're not alone. A nationwide poll by Morning Consult in 2025 found that over half of US adults say they've reduced their spending on groceries in the past 6 months. Not because of job loss or inflation, but because prices just keep creeping up. Miriam Lynn, a retired schoolteacher in Seattle, shared her frustration. I go to the same store, buy the same 10 things, and the total is always higher. I started keeping a notebook just to track it. The detergent I use? Up 30% in 1 year. Same brand, same size. Miriam doesn't see a line item for Tariff, but her detergent is imported. So is her rice cooker. So is the replacement battery for her hearing aid. And over in Des Moines, Iowa, Greg Townsend, a high school senior, saved for months to buy his first gaming laptop. I thought it'd be like $800, but with tax and everything, it came out to over $1,000. I had to wait another 2 months just to cover the difference. He didn't realize his laptop's components, motherboard, display, storage, were all subject to tariffs. He just felt the burden of it. These voices don't speak in policy terms. They don't use words like protectionism or trade deficit. They talk about shrinking grocery bags, stretched paychecks, delayed purchases, and little sacrifices that add up to big ones. It's the quiet frustration of people doing everything right, working, saving, cutting back, and still falling behind. What's perhaps most telling is how normal this all feels now. No one's shocked anymore. They're just tired. Tired of being told the economy is strong while their everyday lives say otherwise. Tired of hearing about tariffs as a strategy, when for them, it's just another invisible bill. These aren't complaints. They're survival reports. And they echo across income brackets, across races, across red states and blue. Because when a policy affects everything from pasta sauce to power tools, it doesn't care how you vote. It just takes tariffs. Weren't meant to be felt like this. They were policy tools, strategic levers, geopolitical signals, but somewhere between Washington's trade calculus and Beijing's manufacturing flaws, the cost landed on American doorsteps. Not dramatically, not overnight, but in $5 extra here, 10 extra there. In grocery aisles, in back-to-school shopping lists, in the checkout screen after an online order. Until one day, people stop asking why things are more expensive, because that's just how it is now. We often talk about inflation as an economic force, but what if it's also a political consequence? What if the true cost of tariffs isn't measured in dollars or jobs, but in eroded trust? Trust that the policies made in DC are actually protecting the people who need it most. Because behind every quiet price hike is a question no one seems to want to answer. If tariffs aren't bringing jobs back, if they aren't lowering costs, and if Americans are the ones paying for them, who exactly are they protecting? Maybe the answer isn't simple. Maybe it never was. But as long as the burden stays hidden in the seams of everyday life, one thing is certain. It won't be the headline. It'll just be the reality. Thanks for joining us on today's episode of The American Ledger. If this conversation made you pause the next time you saw a higher price tag, good. That means you're starting to see what's behind it. Tariffs aren't just headlines from trade wars past. They're present in every receipt, every delayed purchase, every sacrifice that shouldn't have to be made. If you found this episode eye-opening, don't forget to follow the show, leave a rating, and share it with someone who's feeling the same financial squeeze, whether they know why or not. Until next time, stay sharp, stay aware, and stay curious. This is Malik, signing off.